Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Ethan Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How you doing today on this Friday?
I'm good. President's Day weekend, 3-day weekend.
A lot to talk about. We had a packed show on Wednesday, actually, because we had to take a break for Tuesday. There's a lot of news that happened over this week. We're going to get into all of it. There's a lot to break down. So let's begin with the first one, which is kind of interesting, and I'm not actually sure how to take it because after a decently productive season, and you could argue one play away from the NFC Championship game, NFL insider Albert Breer says that Matt Stafford may be on the move and potentially to New York. He wrote an article and it said, and I quote, "In New York, I think the Los Angeles Rams quarterback would be joining a team that's much closer than people think. They got a franchise left tackle, Andrew Thomas, and a budding number one receiver, Malik Neighbors, on offense, and a defense that's well built around three cornerstones, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and Kayvon Thibodeau along the front. They also have some financial wiggle room to land Stafford, then use Stafford to lure veterans." Now, what's interesting is Colin Cowherd reported, I believe yesterday, that the way that this will be basically structured is that the Giants would have to give up the number 3 overall pick in order to get Matthew Stafford, which I'm sure a lot of people believe that's never going to happen, but that's what Colin Cowherd's sources are saying. So here's my question to you. If this is at all a possibility, should the Giants trade for Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, I think they should trade for him if they can, but I don't think they should give up the number 3 pick for him, and I don't understand why the Rams would let Matthew Stafford go. I mean, they gave the Eagles the roughest time in the playoffs of any team. They were driving right down the field. Stafford came back under a lot of adversity, playing in the snow, getting sacked, playing against the Eagles' defense. He had the most success against them, made that big play to Puka Nacua to get him down there and positioned to win the game. He got sacked, and time ran out on him. He couldn't make the 4th down play, but that was an exciting game, and he played extremely well. One game away, one play away, as you say, from the NFC Championship game. I'm surprised by the Rams. Apparently, they are souring on Stafford because of his contract negotiations, and as well as his wife making public statements about the quarterback's problems, not sure what his future is in L.A. The Rams don't want to redo Stafford's deal and give him, another big contract. The Rams may want to go the expensive route with a rental quarterback for 1 year, given the draft and the free agency doesn't look so great this year. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is on his way to the Rams, and I have a few more things to say about that in a few minutes. But then getting back to the Giants, they like Stafford, and why wouldn't they? He's a proven veteran. He gives Daboll and Schoen a little cover if the season starts out poorly for the Giants. The Rams will want that number 3 pick, and the Giants will have to give Stafford a new contract, which they would be crazy to do, I think, for a 37-year-old quarterback. But they only have Tommy DeVito under contract, so they got to get somebody. The Giants may be looking for a bridge quarterback and a draft pick. I think it depends on where Shedeur Sanders and Evans wind up in the draft. If they're both gone by the time number 3 comes around, then maybe there's a deal to be made for Stafford. But that would have to go down real quick, and it would be I think the Rams will want to get something done before the draft because of all the money issues associated with Stafford. He's shown he can raise the level of talent around him, and certainly the Giants need that. He's thrown for 4,000 yards in 4 of his past 5 seasons, topping the 6,000-yard mark in 2021, where he averaged 11, almost 12 interceptions a year. 2 times he was under 10 picks, though, and he had about 28 touchdowns a year. I think he's still reasonably mobile. He executed 67 designed rollouts, which was second most in the NFL this year, and he had a 15% pressure rate. Completed 72% of his passes last year.
Who, Matt Stafford?
Yeah.
No, he didn't. He completed 65.8 in 2024.
I'm sorry, I got that wrong. He's had a history of injuries, though. I think that's
70. He never completed even 70% in any point in his career.
Okay. So That's what I got to say at the moment. I got more to say after you hear your spiel on this.
I would say that this is just a bad setup completely for the New York Giants. I think on both accounts. And I think the only way that the Giants would even consider giving up the third overall pick is if you also include Cooper Kupp in that deal. There is no way you're going to do a 1-for-1 third overall pick and Matt Stafford or anything even close to it unless Cooper Kupp is coming with Stafford. But outside of that, I don't think he'd be that effective with the New York Giants because we saw Andrew Thomas go down. And since week 7, when he went down, the Giants became the worst offensive line from week 7 until the last snap of the Super Bowl. There was no worse offensive line than the New York Giants was. So if let's just say something similar happens and the Giants' offensive line isn't that great. Well, let's take a look at Matt Stafford under pressure among quarterbacks with 100-plus snaps. These are 30 qualified quarterbacks. Matt Stafford is below average to the worst quarterback, or at least close to it. Completion percentage is 19th. Touchdowns, 24th. Turnovers, he had the 4th. He was tied for the 4th most. Turnover-worthy plays, putting the ball in harm's way, he was tied for the most. Passer rating, 26th out of 30. I mean, Matt Stafford under pressure, and if you talk about PFF grade overall, he was dead last. And when you talk about Jalen Hurts, couldn't handle pressure very well this season during the regular season. In the Super Bowl, I thought he did a phenomenal job. But Matt Stafford is significantly worse. I would say that overall this wouldn't be a good fit whatsoever. I'm not surprised that the Rams actually are considering getting off Matt Stafford. We heard last year that I believe it was the 49ers were interested in potentially getting Matt Stafford. We saw even after the Super Bowl when the contract situation became an issue, where Matt Stafford is hesitant to restructure the deal. There were rumors about the Rams moving off. And here we are again. It seems like there's contract issues going along with Matt Stafford, which seems to be his entire spiel right now. And I also think that Stafford's on a little bit of a decline. I think overall he's had one 4,000-yard season in the last 4 years. He's completed basically an average of 65% completion percentage over the course of those 4 years. He hasn't eclipsed 25 touchdowns in the past 3. So I would say that, are we seeing a Matt Stafford that could lead you to a Super Bowl? My answer would be no, because we do have to realize that a big part of the Rams' success and why they were there was not due to the offense. I think it was really because of the defense, shutting teams down consistently. Some of their last, 7 games of the season, they gave up 6, 9, 9, and 9. I mean, it's pretty easy to win when you have a good roster and your defense is holding teams to under 10 points. Actually, the only game that they lost at the last 4 games of the regular season was the ones where they sat a bunch of their stars and Jimmy Garoppolo was out there playing quarterback. They lost 25-30. But in the playoffs against the Eagles, you're right. I thought that the last drive was a beautiful drive, and the offensive line couldn't hold up against Jalen Carter, and he got a crucial sack. But I think overall, this would not be a good fit. I know that Breer is saying, potentially the Giants are a similar roster, but if you take a look at the offensive line, I would say the offensive line of the Rams is better. The numbers back that up, and I think that you're going to a team that's desperate to win football games because we all know, and I fully expect this, the Giants have the hardest strength of schedule entering next year. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen will not survive half the season if they start to crumble early. I think John Mara is going to cut loose very quickly. We're talking probably within the first 5 weeks if they go 1-4 and 0-5, which is very likely regardless if it's Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford. I think there's a decent shot that no matter what, with an offensive line that was quote-unquote improved last year, and Daniel Jones now is a number 1 wide receiver. We saw in week 1, Daniel Jones couldn't see open receivers. And then turnovers became an issue. They ended up, getting rid of Daniel Jones by the end of the season. So, no, I would say that this isn't a good fit. I think the Giants, as has been since 2016, they've been screwed. They're gonna repeatedly get screwed. And I think this is an unfortunate situation for Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. Like I said, bad quarterbacks get good coaches fired. I think Daboll's a good coach, but the Giants are just so far away from any true success. And by true success, I mean getting close to a 500 record. I don't see them getting anywhere close there. We're talking 3 wins maybe next year. Honestly, regardless of the quarterback situation. Because, think about it. They were talking about the win in the trenches. That was Joe Schoen's big thing. Win in the trenches. Well, the offensive line became nothing after Andrew Thomas went down. And the defensive line was pitiful last year. And that's with Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, all of it. Their defense was atrocious. 27th against the run. They couldn't stop anybody. So, Saquon also had a phenomenal game against them when they played all the way back in Week 7. So, I would say that regardless of who's the quarterback, Matt Stafford, whoever else, I do not think that's a good idea whatsoever.
Okay, well, I agree with you that Matthew Stafford needs a solid offensive line in front of him. And I think some of your stats on him last year where he didn't play that well under pressure, remember that Nakua and Kupp were both hurt at the beginning of the year, and the Rams started out terrible. Nobody gave him a chance 7 games into the season. They were very poor there, and when both those guys came back, it was very different. I think the Rams, they're going to ask for the 3rd pick, but I think the Giants have leverage there on their side because Stafford's remaining contract. The Giants' offer might be 2nd round, which is number 34, the 4th round, and then 2026 conditional 2nd round that becomes a 1st rounder if Stafford performs really well. On the money side of things, 2 years remaining on Stafford's contract right now. He counts $49.7 million in 2025 and $53.7 million in 2026 on the Rams cap. Those are crazy numbers. If the Giants get him, the Rams only eat $16.7 million per year of his remaining signing bonus. So that's still pretty good money, but much less than those other numbers I just quoted. The Giants likely to give him probably a new deal if they get him, 3-year deal, probably with an out after 2 years. Year 1, I think, be $23 million. All guaranteed money will be in the first 2 years, so they could part ways after the 2 years are up. Why are the Rams moving their quarterback, whose offense was the biggest challenge for the Eagles? That's a good question. I think the Giants ought to ask that. There may be something there they don't know about. I think the Giants will also have competition from the Vikings and the Steelers. They may be looking at Matthew Stafford as well. And then I mentioned maybe Rodgers going to the Rams if they do get off of Stafford. He's from California. He's got a house in Malibu. That's nice. He played well. He played reasonably well in his last 10 games of the season this past year. He goes from a 3rd-tier coaching staff to McVay, who's one of the best. He has an established O-line if he goes there. His excellent young defense. He knows the system, as LaFleur was the prior OC of the Rams and worked with McVay. Rodgers works, I think he wants infrastructure stability, a head coach he respects, and an organizational, and one that has organizational excellence. The Rams would offer all of that. So be interesting to see. I think the Rams want to get off of Stafford. I think it's a mistake. But if they do, I think the Giants will have competition from the Steelers and the Vikings, and the Giants are not going to be able to pick him up for nothing. They're going to have to give up some. There's going to be some pain involved in them landing Matthew Stafford.
Let's say Matt Stafford is relatively good with the New York Giants. He's not going to win them a Super Bowl. He's not going to even probably make the playoffs, especially with the Cowboys wanting to improve. The Commanders just made the NFC Championship game, and the Eagles just won the Super Bowl. So you're going to go about, 7 wins, maybe? I'm saying if Stafford is tremendous and he performs very well, you're going to get, 7 wins, and then you're going to be out of a potential franchise quarterback position. It would be a Steelers situation where you play just good enough to take you out of the running for some top-tier quarterback talent, which is what they need. Stafford's already been like, he's kind of pulling an Aaron Rodgers a little bit, saying, well, am I going to come back? I don't know, and then the Rams are waiting for him to finally answer him, and then he does, but still, it would be a 1 or 2 year deal where it's like, what are you going to do for us? Are you going to make the playoffs? Are we going to win what are we doing here? I think it's a complete waste of time, a complete waste of money for a level of success that I think that is not going to come.
What do you think the Giants should do at quarterback then?
Well, you have the 3rd overall pick. Pray that both the Titans and the Browns, I think the Browns will get Abdul Carter, but just pray that they don't draft quarterbacks, because then you'll be stuck with Carson Beck, you'll be stuck with Quinn, you'll be stuck with a bunch of quarterbacks that are not first-round talents. So you better hope you're going to either get Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, and pray that Abdul Carter goes to maybe even some mock drafts have the Titans drafting Abdul Carter, but you better hope that one of those 2 quarterbacks, then I would draft them. But No, don't waste your money on a quarterback that's aging, that is contemplating whether or not he's going to play, and the fact that there's been an injury situation and a poorly constructed contract. I think it's just not a good move for the New York Giants. But speaking about potential poor moves, let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, because Joe Burrow has consistently, and especially throughout Super Bowl week, he went on a bunch of shows, FS1's Breakfast Ball, we went on First Take, but particularly on First Take, he's calling out kind of his front office about needing to extend Jamar Chase, who's eligible for an extension. T. Higgins is playing for a franchise tag right now. He should be extended. And Trey Hendrickson's also fighting for an extension, too. He requested a trade last offseason, and this is what Joe Burrow had to say on First Take. We need Trey back. We need to give him what he's worth and what he deserves. He's earned that. We need our young guys to come through. Excuse me. We need to draft well. We need guys to come in and produce immediately. We don't have time to wait around. We have great players that have done great things and deserve to be paid. The Eagles are paying everybody. That seems like the way. Whatever they're doing. And that's true. Howie Roseman has somehow constructed a roster, and I'm going to put the numbers here, with guys where they could spend, over $50 million contracts on. The Bengals got 2 of them. So if the Eagles could do that, why can't the Bengals? Here's my question to you. Do you expect the Bengals to basically extend T. Higgins, get him off the franchise tag, and then also extend Jamar Chase, who's probably going to be the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL?
Well, Burrow is out there in public constantly talking about this. He's putting pressure on management to do something about it, and well, he should. I mean, he needs those guys. They performed extremely well together this past year. They need to sign both Higgins and Chase. The Bengals have $46 million of cap space, and many expect that Chase, who has 1 year remaining on his rookie contract, will be the one signed to a long-term deal, and Higgins will probably walk on into free agency. It is possible to keep them both, though. I think you sign Chase to a record deal, including a large signing bonus and a low 2025 base salary, giving him a team-friendly cap number for this season that would help Higgins. Then the Bengals could work to re-sign Higgins before he becomes a free agent, or put a $26 million franchise tag on him, which is lower than what he probably would receive in the open market, and that's not going to make him happy. And he was not happy last year when they put the franchise tag on him. He asked for a trade. Burrow's confident that both receivers will be retained, and that's his pressure on management. He says, we all want to be together, stay together. We want to make it work. The Bengals led the league in passing yards, 4,918 yards, and TDs, 43 in 2024. Burrow's passer rating, 108.5, was his career best. Chase is 24 years old. He won the Triple Crown this year. Receptions, 127. Yards, 1,708, and TDs, 17. Higgins is 26. He had 73 receptions, 911 yards, and 10 TDs, which is pretty impressive given he only played in 12 games. I mean, if he'd played in all 17, who knows? He might have beaten out Chase. Chase sat out the training camp to protest his contract. Higgins also sat out and asked for a trade after he got the franchise tag. I think that was somewhat of a distraction, as the Bengals training camp wasn't what it could have been, and they started 1-4. Burrow says we have to play better in September. We need both Chase and Higgins in training camp. And as you mentioned, Trey Hendrickson's out there too. He also wants a long-term deal. So it's going to be tough for the Bengals. I think it's going to be hard to pull it off. I think that putting the franchise tag on Higgins is only going to make him angry and disrupt things. So they got to find a way to sign them both, or I think Higgins is gone.
Well, I think that they definitely need T. Higgins back, because he is in a very rare situation. I would say him and Chris Godwin, who are both potentially on the market this offseason. Chris Godwin is. T. Higgins is on the franchise tag. But they are both wide receiver ones being forced into a wide receiver 2 position, because the Bengals have Jamar Chase, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have Mike Evans. So they're in unique situations, because not many teams can confidently say, I got 2 wide receiver ones. The Cincinnati Bengals can. But I brought the graphic up in the very beginning of this topic, and I want to put it up again, because this is utterly ridiculous. This is a general manager complete failure at doing your job, because the fact that the Eagles can get away with $750+ million contracts, two of which that are basically hovering at the $100+ million range, and the Bengals, all they got is Joe Burrow at the $55 million a year contract, average annual value, and Orlando Brown Jr., and you got nobody else? I mean, what are you doing here? Who the hell are you wasting your cap money on? Seriously, it's the Dallas Cowboys, except a little bit worse. Because honestly, you have Joe Burrow, who is now he was originally the only active quarterback who gave Mahomes fits. But now we just saw Jalen Hurts put up two phenomenal performances in two Super Bowls against the Chiefs. One that they won this past Super Bowl, and then one that he lost back in 2022. But Joe Burrow, like, what are we doing here? He is your franchise quarterback. We could complain about his injury history all we want. And maybe he is injury prone. But we could also say he's had one of the most disappointing offensive lines since he came into the league. He literally was about half a second away from Jamar Chase breaking free and him, throwing the would-be game-winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl when they played against the Los Angeles Rams there. But I would say, yeah, you need to start paying some guys and paying them now. The fact that we heard all throughout the season that Joe Burrow set up a private meeting with Zach Taylor and they were discussing things, and you saw him in the post-game conferences frustrated about how this team is performing. I mean, you can't really have a much better season, individual performance, than Joe Burrow had this past year. And somehow you go 9-8 and miss the playoffs by one game. I mean, you can't do much better than what Joe Burrow did. This defense, 25th in points in scoring defense, 25th in total defense. I mean, they were just a overall bad team, and we could look at some of their games here. They were the unluckiest team in the NFL. We could look at the Baltimore Ravens when they were 1-3 at the time. You go into overtime in that game, and I think it's conservative play calling when Joe Burrow was having a tremendous game. And what do you do in overtime? Run, and then what ultimately ended up being, for the Bengals, the game-losing play where you kick a field goal and a rookie punter botches the snap, and you have to kick a wobbly field goal that goes nowhere, and then your defense, who couldn't block you or I if we were running towards them, gave up a 50-plus yard run to Derrick Henry, which set up the game-winning field goal for the Ravens. And we could go down the list. I mean, they gave up 44 points to Russell Wilson's offense that averaged about 14 points the last 6 or 7 weeks. I mean, it's a complete embarrassment. You gave up 27 points to the Tennessee Titans, who are currently debating whether or not they want to trade the first overall pick and potentially are sticking with Will Levis. The fact that this is the team, and you already fired your DC, so that's at least good. But you can't have a better season than what Joe Burrow did. He literally gave his all. Your running game sucked. Chase Brown did an okay job, but you were ranked 30th in the league because you didn't have a dynamic runner. You were 25th in touchdowns, and you were 20th in yards per attempt here. But overall, this is complete general manager malpractice here. The fact that an Eagles team that just won the Super Bowl can spend this amount of money, 7 players with $50+ million contracts, and you can only really get one massive contract down.
Pretty interesting that Saquon Barkley isn't on that list.
Well, he's making $37.75 million.
He's the reason the Eagles got to the Super Bowl.
Right, but then we saw in the Super Bowl Jalen Hurts going off. So the fact that the Eagles could do that, and you're sitting on your hands basically and watching these teams spend money, be successful. I mean, the only reason why the Rams got to the Super Bowl, because remember, we heard the general manager say F them picks, and they won a Super Bowl in Matt Stafford's first year with them. We saw Tom Brady and the Bucs. The Bucs started spending money. Tom Brady, Antonio Brown, Leonard Fournette, Rob Gronkowski, bringing in all these guys in. They already had a pretty young roster, but they bought some talent around them. And I think the way the NFL is going is you draft defense, you buy offense. Well, the only thing is the Bengals don't buy anybody.
Yeah, well, I think they should try to bring back the offense they had. Chase Brown, he's a serviceable running back. They didn't do so well in running the ball this year, but if you could bring him back and get those 2 wide receivers back, and the offense, the offensive line, maybe you can improve that a little bit. But you got to. All they had to do was win one more game this year, and the defense is a sieve. They got to improve the defense. I mean, they lost the Patriots the first game of the season, and they started out 1-4. They can't dig a hole like that for themselves going forward. They have to do much better in September. And Burrow said it. We got to find a way to play better in September. And they got to find a way to improve their defense. I mean, they fired their defensive coordinator. Maybe that will help. But they have to re-sign Hendrickson, and they got to put a few more pieces on the defensive side of the ball and a better scheme to just be a little bit better. I mean, the offense is fine, even with the poor ranks in some of the categories. They have Joe Burrow and they have Chase. They have Jamar Chase and they have T. Higgins. That makes a big difference right there.
I think that right. And by the way, I should also add, 6-year Bengals veteran Jermaine Pratt requested a trade earlier this week. So Bengals defensive players are abandoning ship. I mean, that Trey Hendrickson requested to be traded. T. Higgins requested to get traded last offseason as well. You got Jermaine Pratt asking to, want out of the team. I mean, the Bengals are in a very strange situation, which they don't have actually a tremendous amount of cap room. They have the 11th most in the NFL. So the big question is, how badly are you constructing these deals here? Because Joe Burrow, by the way, said he has no issue with restructuring his deal. He made that very clear when asked directly. He doesn't care how he does it, whether he backloads his contract, whether he gets a lot of the signing bonus, or they convert it to signing bonus and he gets it up front. He does not care. He is saying, I want talent, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get it.
Yeah, okay.
Because think about it. If it goes the way that it normally goes, which means Jermaine Pratt's probably gone, Trey Hendrickson is very disgruntled, so much so that they may trade him. You just got rid of a 17.5 sack pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson. Jamar Chase, he technically has 1 more year left on his deal. Actually, probably 2 if they pick up the 5th-year option. But the fact that he is not extended, and by the way, don't take the Jerry Jones route, where you wait way too long and then pay him way too much, because that's just how the league moves forward with contracts. It's next man up. T. Higgins, he is the guy that you desperately need back because he is basically gone. So you're going to need to figure that out, because he's going to force his way out one way or another if he doesn't get an extension, because he already requested a trade.
He can be a free agent.
Right. He's going to force his way out if the Bengals don't give him what he wants. I'd prioritize him, and then worry about Jamar Chase down the road. But worry about the guy who legitimately can leave this season.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say Jamar Chase, if he doesn't get the contract, he will sit. He will.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. 100%. So he's not going to go to training camp. He's going to make a lot of noise about that, and that's going to be a problem for them. So they got to get both of them done. Maybe they do Higgins first.
Yes. And
get that done before the free agency starts, but. They have to do Chase this year. They can't wait another year.
I completely agree.
I mean, maybe they try well, they don't need to put the franchise tag on him, right? Because they have him. No.
I mean, you could also do 5th-year option as well. So they have that luxury. Although I would just say the market's going to keep going up. I mean, we're looking at T. Higgins potentially being a $30 million quarterback. So what's Jamar Chase?
Quarterback.
Oh, sorry, wide receiver. So what's Jamar Chase? $40 million? $37 million? Because I think 35 is Justin Jefferson. Jamar Chase is going to be, he even said, he's going to be more than that. If it's a penny more, he's going to be more than that.
Why wouldn't he be? He had 127 receptions, 1,708 yards, 17 TDs, all the highest in the league. He
saved my fantasy team. He's one of the reasons why I won this year. Hey, I was going up against some tough teams like Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase, and Jamar Chase was a massive reason why I won fantasy this year. They got to start paying stuff. They got to start paying people.
Yeah, maybe they need better leadership in the contract area and the cap management, because look what the Eagles did. That's a good point by Burrow. Look, they managed to get contracts of more than $50 million for 8 of their players, and the Bengals got Burrow.
Burrow and Orlando Brown Jr., but Burrow has the massive contract.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a situation where you're the Cowboys making horrible deals for old players and doing it way too late. You're not the Cleveland Browns, where you make desperate decisions like giving Deshaun Watson $230 million fully guaranteed. You're not the New Orleans Saints, where you're in cap hell for the past 4 seasons. You have wiggle room. Use it.
Yeah.
At some point, you got to be like, okay, I have tremendous talent on my team. Let's start paying. But the Bengals are historically a cheap franchise.
Yeah, well, they're in a smaller market,
Well, you don't need to be with Joe Burrow as your quarterback.
But
the fact that you made a Super Bowl a few years ago, the fact that you're one of very few teams, maybe 2 teams, to give the Chiefs serious issues, at least in the regular season.
I think Cincinnati's a smaller market than Philadelphia. Right?
Well, yeah, but especially not now. Philadelphia is a Super Bowl winning town right now. Again.
But that's part of the reason they're able to give the $50 million contracts to those guys. Right? I mean, they probably sell more paraphernalia. They always pack the stadium. They got a few more things going for them than Cincinnati does. So
it took them way too long to get a practice facility with a roof in Cincinnati. It's cold in Cincinnati.
Oh yeah.
You got to start spending money where it matters. Like, what are you going to do moving forward? Let Joe Burrow eventually get so upset that he forces his way out? I could see that happening.
Well, he's not going to be going anywhere for a while. He's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. Right?
Stranger things. We were in a situation where the Broncos gave Russell Wilson a 5-year contract without him playing a snap. He lasted 2 years and became the biggest dead cap hit in NFL history.
Yeah. Well, Joe Burrow's an excellent.
You give it a couple of years, Joe Burrow may want out.
Yeah, well, Joe Burrow's an excellent quarterback. The way he played down the stretch was amazing. Some of those games, his accuracy, the way he is one of the best for sure. If they had made the playoffs, if they'd had a season where they weren't looking terrible most of the season record-wise, I think he could have won the MVP this year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that if he was around the 11-win mark instead of the 9-8 mark and made the playoffs, he probably would also be up for Offensive Player of the Year and MVP. I mean, he was the only playoff player or non-playoff player to even be given MVP votes. Think about that. He was a finalist. He was the only player amongst the finalists to not be in the playoffs. And there's a reason why. He nearly threw for 5,000 yards on a team that had no defense and no running game. Just the way it is. All right, we're taking a quick break, but coming up, no surprise. Cowboys are still talking Super Bowl. Dak Prescott says they're up next. Yeah, we'll talk about that as well as, is Trevor Lawrence on the move? And is Travis Kelce calling it quits? We'll discuss all of that right after this.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online, and Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic of today's show. So, Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys are once again talking Super Bowl. And after the Eagles won Super Bowl 59, Dak Prescott was asked what they thought about it. And this is what Dak had to say. Take a listen.
I mean, I feel like we compete with the Eagles and beat them for the most part when we played them. I don't want to say check the record when they're the guys holding the trophy right now. So credit to them. They've earned it and they deserved it by all means. But, yeah, very close, especially when you even watch the NFC game, the NFC Championship. And those two teams that we battle against each and every year a couple of times. And as I said, feel confident about we've gotten the better part each and every time. To see it in such a dominating fashion, credit to them. It's our turn and it's on us.
So here's my question to you. What do you think of Dak Prescott's comment?
I think he's dreaming. I don't think that they're that close, personally. The second time in 8 years he watched them, the Eagles, win the Super Bowl. he thinks his team is close to winning the championship. I feel, as you just said, I feel like we've competed and we played well against the Eagles. How about everybody else? Your record was 7-10 this year. He credit them; they earned it. Yeah, that's true, they did. And guess what? The Commanders are in your division too, and they played the Eagles for the NFC Championship game this year. And you're going to have to go up against those guys. That's 4 games next year. You'll be playing against those two teams. So I think he did mention the Commanders and the commentary there. They've not played in a Super Bowl for the Cowboys now for 29 years, and they finished 7-10, as I mentioned, in 2024. Prescott only played 8 games, needing hamstring surgery, and he has an injury history now. He's on his 3rd head coach. He had Jason Garrett, 2016-19, Mike McCarthy, 2020 to 2024, and now Schottenheimer is going to be their coach. He's a rookie head coach. He never coached in the league. Says his health is good. 12 weeks after the surgery, I'm really looking forward to amping it up here. Recently, got all my confidence, and we're going to be fine. He talks about them being really close. The Cowboys ranked 11th in passing yards per game. They were 27th in rushing yards per game, 28th in defensive yards given up. They averaged 355 yards. Their defense was a shell of what it was in the past couple of years. The total yards per game, they were 27th. They got 327. Of course, Prescott was hurt a good part of that time, but they didn't play that well when he was in there. They're running the ball. Their big problem is they can't run the ball and they can't stop the run. Those are the 2 of their biggest weaknesses, and they've got a rookie coach. So I don't know what he's talking about. I don't think they're that close.
This is if laughable wasn't that bad, it's probably very tone deaf, because we have to fully acknowledge who Dak Prescott plays for. The Dallas Cowboys, and more importantly, he plays for Jerry Jones, the owner, GM, guy who runs everything, and also doesn't quite understand what the Cowboys need, because the first thing would be, and by the way, we already hear trade rumors about Micah Parsons. Yikes. But let's take a look, because everybody knows that the Cowboys, they didn't make a lot of moves. Well, over the past 4 off seasons, they really haven't made any moves, because if we take a look, these are the largest free agent contract signings by the Dallas Cowboys in the last 4 off seasons. The highest guy was last year with Eric Kendricks at 1 year, $3 million. Largest. I'm going to emphasize, largest free agent contract signings over the last 4 off seasons. And this, by the way, this past off season, that's where Jerry Jones said he was all in. 1 year, $3 million. Look down below. Spent a total of $43.9 million on free agents since 2021. It's embarrassing. It's laughable. Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys can't get out of their own way because they keep talking about Super Bowls. When you're asked a question about the Philadelphia Eagles, the answer should not be, it's our turn. You rather should say, we have a lot of work to do. They got better. They got significantly better. The offensive line's old. The Cowboys are one of the oldest teams in the NFL. Their cap situation right now is 25th in the NFL. They're right now negative by about $2 million, according to Spot Track. And also, let's take a look at what their coaching staff will be. Because not only do they have Brian Schottenheimer, they got 10 first-year guys, 10 first-year coaches with the team, and 5 straight-up first-year NFL coaches at all. 15 first-year guys on the roster in total. 10 that are their first year with the Cowboys, and 5 that are first year coaching in the NFL with NFL experience. And this is a team that's supposedly next up to win a Super Bowl? I think it's embarrassing. It honestly makes no sense. And not only that, Dak Prescott, speaking about you are the highest paid quarterback in the NFL at $60 million. For what, 12 wins in the regular season, to get injured here and there, and also to have the worst playoff winning percentage, minimum 5 games played in the NFL? Your 2 wins, one of which came against a Tom Brady team that had no offensive line in 2022, and that at the slightest bit of pressure would throw the ball away. It was an ugly look for Brady, but your defense did its job, and you capitalized on a broken down Bucs team. That was really your only tremendous game. We could look at some of the numbers and say, well, last year he threw for 403 yards. Well, yeah, because the second half you were getting blown out so badly in 2023 rather, you're getting blown out so badly by the Green Bay Packers that you needed to do something. You couldn't run the football. Packers put in their backups. So no, this is a simple, classic off-season statement, and I'm surprised it didn't come from Jerry Jones this time. Instead, it came from Dak Prescott. But this is what Cowboys hate now. There was a poll The Athletic put out towards the end of the season when the rumors were out about Mike McCarthy leaving the organization, and 70% said they were going in the wrong direction. Even Cowboys fans now are getting less delusional about their own team.
Yeah,
I understand. You're part of this team. You're supposed to say we're playing for a Super Bowl, but you don't need to just outright say we're next.
Yeah, I think it's the interesting stats there on the free agency that the Cowboys don't play in free agency for the most part for the past 4 years, and I think that's Jerry Jones' ego. He thinks he can build the team with his drafting, which he controls, and he builds the team from within. And they had some success there in the regular season under McCarthy, 3 years with 12 wins every year. But then they get to the playoffs and they can't do anything. And Dak Prescott says we're very close. Hey, maybe they could get into the playoffs. I don't think so, but maybe they could. Even if they do, look at his record, as you say, it's the worst. So I think he's dreaming. I don't think that's the right thing to say. I think I agree with you. He should have said, we got a lot of work to do. The competition is stepped up in our division. Both the Commanders and look at the Eagles. They won the Super Bowl. We got a lot of work to do.
You sat on the sidelines nursing an injury while two teams in your own division, not obviously in your own conference, but two teams in your own division were going head-to-head to make it to the Super Bowl. You haven't gotten out of the divisional round. And you're talking Super Bowl. Make it to an NFC championship game for the first time in, I think, 29 years. What are we doing here? It's a classic Cowboys thing. Jerry Jones saying we're all in and then doing nothing. Cowboys Nation in the past saying we're headed to the Super Bowl, only to make the playoffs and lose in the first round or miss the playoffs entirely. And that is even swung around in the opposite direction with basically 70% of them or more saying that they're going in the wrong direction. Jerry Jones is still the general manager. And right now you're in a poor cap situation because, again, according to SpotTrack, you have your 26th best cap space at negative $2.3 million. It's a horrible situation to be in. You're America's team, which I think that title should be stripped from you because America should not be represented by a team that is a constant disappointment like the Dallas Cowboys. You have no running game. Your offensive line's old. You have CeeDee Lamb and who? No disrespect to Brandon Cooks, but CeeDee Lamb and who? Your defense right now is made up of Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence and a cornerback group that isn't great. Your linebacking core also isn't that great. Demarion Overshown, who was your most explosive defender, he's probably going to be out for this year. Maybe some of next year as well.
Well, you brought in Eberflus to be your defensive coordinator. That's the answer.
Yeah, phenomenal. Matt Eberflus, the guy who got laughed out of Chicago because people are mad he didn't call a timeout with Caleb Williams. Offensive coordinator is brand new for you. Pass game specialist is brand new. Running back coach is brand new. Assistant wide receiver coach is brand new. Assistant defensive line coach, defensive pass game coordinator and safeties coach, secondary and corners coach, D-line, special teams coordinator, chief of staff. They're all new to your team. But some of these titles are, or at least one of these titles are ridiculous. And listen to this. These are just brand new NFL coaches, first year experienced coaches. Wide receivers is completely brand new. Offensive line is completely brand new. Defensive assistant / quality control, two of them, they're brand new. And this one, I'm sure this will help Dak Prescott, QB fellowship. What is a QB fellowship, coach? I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know.
But that is completely brand new. You got 15 first-year coaches with your team. 10 of which are just new to your team, 5 of which are brand new coaches with no NFL experience. This will be their first year. And Brian Schottenheimer, who didn't call plays last year, he's your head coach? I'm concerned.
So am I.
Very, very concerned. Let's get to our next topic here, and this is ridiculous, and potentially this is going to be a quick topic for us, but who knows, because reportedly, according to Ryan Burr of the Big Ten Network, the Steelers have inquired about trading for Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence with the direct quote saying, "This is directly from the horse's mouth in the Jags organization." With Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio chiming in saying, quote, "One of the reports that seems to be far too random to be fabricated. Where there's smoke, there's fire."
Yeah.
All I know is the Steelers finally care about competent quarterbacks, potentially, although I have my opinion on Trevor Lawrence. But here's my question to you. What are the chances the Jaguars actually trade Trevor Lawrence away?
I think it's 0. The Jaguars beat reporter Michael DeRocco shot that down. He said it's a ridiculous idea. He said there is no chance the Jaguars will trade Lawrence. The main reason the Jaguars hired Liam Cohen was to get Lawrence back on track in 2025. The owner, Shad Khan, said that the primary question he asked all the head coaching candidates was, how would they get Lawrence and the offense back on track? What was the fundamental thing that we need to address? And the number one thing, obviously, is the quarterback position. So he said our commitment to Trevor, I think, it is well known, and I believe in him. So it started with that, and that was the fundamental question to all the candidates. How would you do it? And after we got done with that, it was very evident to me that Liam Cohen was the guy. So Cohen's first season with the Bucs offense was top 5 in scoring. Only offense in top 5 in both passing yards per game and rushing yards per game. Baker Mayfield had a career year in many respects. You can look at the contract extension and the revamping of the coaching staff this season as examples of their commitment to Trevor Lawrence. I don't think if they're doing all that, they ain't going to trade him. That would be crazy. I mean, I'm sure. What would that say to Cohen if they up and traded Trevor Lawrence? That'd be crazy. So I think that's all BS. I don't think there's anything to it.
I 100% agree with you. There is a 0% chance that the Jaguars are going to trade away Trevor Lawrence because he would cost them $83 million against the cap, which, again, we've already seen is not out of the realm of possibility because the Broncos literally did it with Russell Wilson. But no, this is not going to happen. But I also don't think Trevor Lawrence is the answer. I do not think Trevor Lawrence is the answer that's going to bring the Jaguars to the promised land or even get them relatively close. Because we've seen now in back-to-back years, Trevor Lawrence regress. Now, I know 4,000 yards is not necessarily a regression, but it was a dip in touchdowns, a raise in interceptions, and even a slight dip in passing yards in 2023. And in 2024, it all came to basically falling off a cliff here because he went on a horrible streak. Terrible streak. He had a 2-8 record. He had a 60% completion percentage, 2,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, 7 picks with Brian Thomas, who I believe was top 3 or top 5 in receiving yards this past season. And Trevor Lawrence's completion percentage, by the way, never got above 65, if you round the numbers up. A 60, you know what? We'll even do it. I'll even give you the exact number. It went above 65.6% 4 times. 4 times. The other 6 games, it was 57.1, 55.3, 54.5, 51.6, 46.7. And against the Houston Texans, where everyone was kind of surprised at how close the score was, thanks to Mac Jones, and people really thought that the Al Shire hit that put Trevor Lawrence in concussion protocol, who knows what that game would have turned out, but you were already getting blown out at that point. Trevor Lawrence went 4 of 10 with an interception. So it wasn't even a good game for him at all. So I don't think they're going to trade him. I think that it would kill your cap situation. I think if you have a brand new GM, a brand new coach, I don't think it's the right time, at least in this case, because you already paid him $55 million per year. We'll bring up the quarterback contract situations here. He's the second highest paid quarterback in the NFL, tied with Jordan Love, who's had a little bit of playoff success, but has the youngest roster in the NFL, and then Joe Burrow, who's made a Super Bowl and gave Mahomes fits every single time. He's in that group. I don't think he fits into that group.
Neither do I. I think we talked about this before. We were very surprised by that contract. I think it was. I think they overpaid.
Absolutely, because you're feeding into that generational talent narrative. And he's not, though. We could sit here.
Certainly hasn't shown that he can
Correct.
be.
He right now has not lived up to his contract whatsoever.
Not at all.
And not only that, he's playing in the worst division in football. He's playing in the worst division in football, and it's not close. Because the Colts do not have a quarterback. Yes, they have Anthony Richardson, but he can't complete a single pass whatsoever. He has the lowest, the second lowest completion percentage since 2000. He can't complete a single pass. C.J. Stroud right now has no offensive line, and we saw a sophomore regression. The Titans have Will Levis, and they want to stick with him, supposedly. So you have to step up. You have to separate yourself, at least make it competitive. Mac Jones also showed a little bit more promise than Trevor Lawrence at times. A lot of dink and dunks, but he was actually this close to beating the Texans in the game Trevor Lawrence got injured in.
Yeah.
I think they were down 20-3 at that point. I may be mistaken, but they were down. Mac Jones brought them all the way back, and I think the game was 23-20 by the end of it. It's not a good look. I agree that this report is completely stupid, but at least the Steelers are trying. They're exhausting their options here.
I'm pretty sure the Steelers did reach out. Why not? He could reach out
They
to
got
anybody.
nobody.
He could reach out. I don't think the Steelers don't have any. I think Justin Fields is somebody they should really strongly
What's
consider.
he going to do, though? What is Justin Fields going to do to make the Steelers a true contender?
He's going to be the piece in the offense that will be unpredictable, whether he's going to pass the ball or run it. And with Arthur Smith and re-signing Najee Harris or bringing in another equally competent running back and maybe getting Deebo Samuels as a wide receiver who is also run the ball, I think they could be very capable, and they could play more of a Ravens type of offense. And they gave up on that. They started the year. He was 4-2. He was 4-2, Nate, and the games he lost were very close.
Correct.
And it wasn't his fault that they lost those games. So I think I wouldn't give up on Justin Fields personally.
Well, you and I both agree with that. But what I'm saying is the Steelers are going to be in the same repeat process of you're above 500, but you're not going to do anything in the playoffs. And it's going to be every single year because that's just how Mike Tomlin works. He's able to elevate quarterbacks up to not being god-awful generally. I mean, Kenny Pickett didn't ruin his streak of having above 500 season. Kenny Pickett we're talking about,
No.
which, by the way, is the first Super Bowl winning quarterback that Tomlin has drafted. Because he didn't draft Big Ben. People, they don't realize that. Kenny Pickett is the first Super Bowl winning quarterback Mike Tomlin's drafted. But he won it as the backup for the Philadelphia Eagles.
For the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's how bad the quarterback drafts have been.
Well, my thinking is if the Eagles, the Steelers are foolish enough to let Justin Fields go, he'll have a starting job next year. I think he'll be a starter somewhere. I really do.
Who would he be? So think about
he could be a starter for the Giants.
That would be a horrible decision.
I don't know. I think he could be a starter for the Giants.
It would be the Bears 2.0. No offensive line, one weapon.
No, the Giants' offensive line with
Defense
Andrew Thomas.
is good.
Andrew Thomas back healthy and maybe a free agent or two and the draft pick. They could be okay. They could be back to being better. They have a decent running back. They've got Malik Neighbors out there.
Tyrone
They have a
Tracy
Robinson who would maybe he still has a opportunity to be well. They might lose Darius Slayton, which would be too bad. But I think that I think the Steelers should think hard about keeping Justin Fields. I really do. I think he could do well for them.
When it comes to this, though, I'll stay on this until proven wrong. Trevor Lawrence is not the answer for the Jaguars.
Well,
He's good enough. He's good enough to at least have, competition in the worst division in football. He's won one playoff game and a great comeback, but honestly, it was way more the Chargers' fault in my opinion because that's just how Brandon Staley operated. Choke. That's just how it works. But you have to be competitive in the worst division in football. If you can't do that, then the Jaguars paid $55 million to a quarterback that is just good. He has to change the narrative this upcoming season.
I think his decision making is questionable too.
I agree.
It's not just a talent out there. He's got plenty of talent. He's a physical specimen, but his decision making is questionable at times too.
I also found it interesting that Khan thought that that this past season was the best Jaguars team he's seen. where I think that the prior season, 2023, you actually had more talent than 2024, and obviously the results show it. Where you don't start off, or Trevor Lawrence doesn't start a 2-8 record. Instead, you actually go 9-8 and have a shot at the playoffs. Like I don't know where Khan got that idea of this year having significantly more talent. I don't get that really at all. He's not the answer. Not the answer, in my opinion. Jaguars fans are going to get mad at me. But Liam Cohen, that introductory press conference.
Whether he's really that good or not, whether he's really that good as a head coach or not, that's a big question mark, too. This will be his first time as a head coach. He hasn't been the coach all that many years, actually, and he did a lot of it in college.
Yes.
So, I think he's a question mark as well.
Not a good look. I don't know if you saw the introductory press conference. Very awkward. He has to get the Jaguars Duval down. If he can't get that, it's very awkward when he says it. If he can't get that down, what is that a sign of things to come?
What couldn't he get down?
Duval, the Jaguars, chant.
Oh yeah.
Couldn't get it right. Or he got it right, but it was very awkward. Very embarrassing. Speaking about potentially embarrassing, at least the Super Bowl performance for this player was pretty embarrassing. Travis Kelce, in a podcast with his brother after the Super Bowl, talked about the questions of whether or not he's going to continue playing. Take a listen to what he had to say on his New Heights podcast about pondering retirement.
I know everybody wants to know whether or not I'm playing next year, and right now I'm just kicking everything down the road. I'm kicking every can I can down the road, and I'm not making any crazy decisions, but right now the biggest thing is just being there for my teammates and being there for my coaches, understanding, that there's a lot that goes into this thing. I've been fortunate over the past 5-6 years. I've played more football than anybody.
So here's my question to you. Do you think it's time for Travis Kelce to hang up the cleats and call it a career?
I think it's interesting his brother had the Super Bowl winning hat on there. Wonder what Travis thought about that when he came on and saw him wearing that hat. I'd say coming off a Super Bowl performance where he was a non-factor and his team was dominated by the Eagles, he might want to take some time and decide whether he wants to continue playing or not, which would be returning for his 13th NFL season. I think leading up to the week of this, in the week leading up to the Super Bowl, he said multiple times he planned to play in 2025. But as you saw there, he struck a different tone with his brother on his brother's podcast that was just released this past Wednesday. He said he's been fortunate over the past 5 or 6 years. He played more football than anybody, and that's true. I mean, he with playing in the AFC championship games and the Super Bowl, that's 3 more games a season, and they've been in the Super Bowl 5 of the past six years. So, he did play a lot of football. And he says that's a lot of wear and tear on your body, and I agree with that. And it means a lot of time spent in the building focusing on your craft. So he's been playing a lot of football. Maybe he's getting a little tired of it. As you see yourself or not feel yourself have the success you once had, it's a tough pill to swallow, he said. For that not to be there in the biggest moments, knowing your team's counting on you, those are all extremely hard things. It's just a tough reality. But, is it that tough a reality? I mean, his season this year, he had 97 receptions. That's not so bad. He had 823 yards. Not too bad for a tight end. 3 TDs is well off his pace. And in the Super Bowl, 4 for 39 was definitely not for him. But he did have one good playoff game. He had 7 catches for 117 yards and a TD against Houston, but he really did nothing in the AFC Championship game, but they won it. He only had 2 catches for 19 yards. He's a 4-time All-Pro. Says he needs to be all in if he decides to play next season. Says, I owe that to my teammates. If I do come back, not any half-assing it. I like that comment. I can play. It's whether I'm motivated to play. Clark Hunt, the owner of the Chiefs, says he has no problem with Kelce taking as much time as he needs to decide on whether he wants to come back, but thinks he will be back next season and hopes he does come back.
Well, you bring up some of those yards, and I'll bring up some of the numbers, but I'm actually going to be in the party of he should, but he probably won't, because they have just made it to 7 straight AFC Championship games. They have just made it to 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. But yeah, no, it was bad. This season, if we ever talk about really feeling the end of a career, it was this past season, because you say that 823 yards isn't bad. It's his career worst. In fact, all the numbers that he had this season were his career worst. Receiving yards, 823, career worst. Yards per game, 51.4, his career worst. Yards per reception, 8.5, his career worst. Touchdowns, career worst. Rating when targeted, career worst. So, and by the way, the interceptions when targeted, second most of his entire career, 4. So if we ever really feel like it's the end of a career, it was probably this past year, because he did all put up career worst numbers. But we do have to realize that Travis Kelce is not a tight end per se. He's more of a receiver. Because if we take a look at the tight end role, not only are you expected to catch footballs, you're also expected to block. We've seen situations where Kelce's on the sidelines during like run blocks or pass blocking situations. And in fact, if we take a look at the greatest tight end of all time conversation, Travis Kelce has over 1,000 more receiving snaps than Rob Gronkowski, but Rob Gronkowski nearly has 1,000 more pass blocking snaps than Travis Kelce. So we could say Kelce is more of a big slot receiver, because that's his role in the Chiefs. He's listed as a tight end because we're talking about a guy who, I'm trying to look, is 6'5", 250. That ain't a receiver, that's a tight end. But he plays the role of a wide receiver. So yeah, I can understand why. When you're 35 years old, you keep going to AFC Championship games, and you're expected to be in the playoffs at least, a key piece of the offense, and you just can't, because even a Chiefs coach said in some behind the scenes that they were burnt out after going to so many Super Bowls, nearly back to back to back to back to back to back. You get burnt out. You're tired of Super Bowls. It's exhausting when you're playing 22 games, 5 out of the last 6 years. I mean, it is. I can only imagine a 35-year-old tight end who is the key piece of this offense having to be forced to put up great numbers. But I wish I just saw a little bit more drive from him. And I played this on the last show we had. Just sitting on a play where Mahomes is scrambling for his life and you kind of just give up, and your guy who's in coverage with you ends up being the one who tackles Patrick Mahomes. You could show a little bit more energy here. It kind of looks like you gave up. And people say, oh yeah, well, he saw the flag being thrown. He gives up well before the flag gets thrown. So I think and by the way, there was another play earlier on in this game, exact same situation, the exact same route. He goes on his little zone-breaking curl route, even though that was man, but it's the same thing, and he just gives up. So it's not a great look. I do not expect him to hang it up, because, like I said, he's made the 7 straight AFC Championship games. He has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. There's a reason why Gronk came out of retirement. Not only was he tired of Bill Belichick and the Patriots system, but he was aging. He's been banged up. He goes to Tampa with Tom Brady, and things are always nice. Makes it to a Super Bowl. Makes it deep in the playoffs another year.
Caught 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl.
Right, he was a key piece of the Buccaneers offense when they needed him. He was Brady's security blanket, but he didn't need to be the key piece of the offense, because the Bucs had Chris Godwin, he had Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette, Antonio Brown. We can go Tyler Johnson had a crucial 3rd down catch against the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship game en route to a Super Bowl. I mean, there were a lot more pieces than just Rob Gronkowski. In the Chiefs, we didn't have a lot of snaps with DeAndre Hopkins. Xavier Worthy's a rookie. Hollywood Brown was banged up all year. Juju Smith-Schuster is not a great receiver anymore. So Kelce was the guy. So I can understand why didn't he say also he had like 10 surgeries last year or something like that as well? I mean, the guy's banged up. I can understand
He's
why.
35 years old. He's played 12 years in the NFL. He played a lot more games than most of the players, because he's in the playoffs every year.
He's made the playoffs every single year since 2015. So 3 years before Mahomes became a starter.
Yeah.
So he's playing a lot of football games.
Yeah. And I think he's a great player. I think he's a Hall of Fame player. But do I think he's a better tight end, let's say, than Gronk? I don't, because of a tight end's role is also to block, and he didn't do that.
Right.
You put that stat out there, the 1,000 more passing snaps
He's
than Gronk.
5,800 receiving snaps.
Yeah.
Or yards where he went to go run a route. 5,800. Gronk is, I think, 4,800.
Yeah.
And then, but he also has.
You could argue Gronk is the greatest blocking tight end in history.
Gronk's the greatest tight end because tight ends are required to block at times. Kelce doesn't block.
Yeah.
That's the major difference here. Tremendous receiver. Phenomenal receiver. Just doesn't do the other half of what a tight end should do. But yeah, Travis Kelce's played 199 games in his career.
I predict he'll be back next year.
I agree because.
Why would you quit, actually?
Right.
He made the Super Bowl.
I would say.
He had a bad game. Everybody had a bad game on the Chiefs side. The Eagles were dominant.
Yeah.
They may, you know what? They could say, probably the Eagles are going to make it back again. Well, let's make it back. It's a rubber match. Best 2 out of 3.
Right.
5,
6,
That
7,
could be their
7
motivating.
straight 1,000-yard seasons.
That could be their motivating factor.
7 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons from 2016 to 2022.
I like him a lot. I think he's been a great player. I like his personality. And, he could retire and go hang out with Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Could be a TV analyst.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could keep doing the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, he could go with his brother. They're going to make all kinds of commercials with he and his brother.
Yeah.
So he's set. He doesn't have to worry about.
Not the greatest tight end, though. Not the greatest tight end. People can argue it all you want.
Great receiver.
Phenomenal receiver.
Great player.
Yes.
Yeah.
But not the
Great
best tight
athlete.
end because he doesn't do the other half of what a tight end's responsibility is. In fact, he's not even on the field in some of those situations.
Yeah.
Gronk, now here's the difference. Gronk was banged up and wasn't that major receiving threat late in his career. Patriots still had him out there blocking. 2018, he flew under the radar.
So did Tampa Bay. They had him blocking too.
Right. In 2018, flew under the radar, but also had the biggest catch in that Super Bowl. That's kind of what Gronk was. Had the biggest catch, but flew under the radar because he was a very, very good blocker. Travis Kelce, not a great blocker. I mean, we saw some of the chip blocks. It was like Tim Tebow chip blocking out there. Tim Tebow got released from the Jacksonville Jaguars after he tried to attempt the block and completely screwed it up. That was Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl. Several missed chip blocks. So that's just not what he does. He's out there to catch passes, and when he doesn't do that, what is he good for?
Yeah.
He's a threat.
He's
threat.
starting to recognize that himself. He said some of that on his brother's podcast.
Yeah. No. Tremendous player. I expect him to be back, but he probably has 2 years. I'm not saying good years, great years, whatever. He has 2 years where he could be a viable option, but he can't be the option. Because we just saw him the past couple years be the option in Kansas City, and the past 2 years we've talked about
I don't think
how
he'll be the
lackluster
option.
the Chiefs' weapons have been.
He's not going to be the option going forward.
He can't be.
Worthy, looks like the rising star.
Yes.
And the other guy coming back off the injury.
What, Hollywood Brown?
No.
Rashee Rice.
Yeah, Rashee Rice. He's a good receiver too.
Yes.
He'll be back.
But let's just say, injuries happen all the time. Kelce this year was the leading receiver.
Yeah.
That can't happen if he's 36 years old. That can't happen.
No, I don't think it will.
Because the past 2 years where Kelce's been the guy, the conversation we've had about the Chiefs' offense is, well, Mahomes has got nobody. Yeah, it's because Travis Kelce's the only option. He can't be the guy. If you want, and they just won the Super Bowl, by the way, the prior year, but he can't be the option if you want to go out and consistently be great. Because otherwise, we take a look at some of these situations, some of the potential free agents for the Chiefs. Is there a point where Mahomes goes the Brady drought of 10 years without a Super Bowl win?
Could be.
Because Andy Reid, he's not getting any younger.
Maybe the Chiefs have peaked. Maybe this Super Bowl blowout is a foreshadowing of things to come, that the Chiefs are not going to be that good going forward. Could be.
Oh, not that good. That's a hot take. That's not that good.
I don't know.
They got Mahomes as the quarterback.
Yeah, well, he had his worst year. His accuracy is not that good. He made some poor decisions along the way. The team bailed him out, and they got very lucky. And all those wins that they got, Are they going to keep having all that luck? I don't think so. I think it's going to catch up to them, and we'll see.
People talked about how Tom Brady is the dink and dunk artist. Mahomes, the past, 3 seasons, 2 seasons, has been the quarterback with the most yards after the catch in the NFL.
Yeah, I think
and also the lowest yards per completion in the air yards per completion.
Mahomes shows he gets happy feet when he's under pressure.
Dude,
that was something that never happened to Brady. Think about that Broncos playoff. Think about the Broncos playoff game where their offensive line was crap, and Brady got hit, I think, like 23 times and sacked numerous times. He still had them at the end of the game. They were going for a 2-point conversion to tie the game.
2015 AFC Championship.
Try to tie the game. And after that, Belichick fired the offensive line coach, and they brought back Scarnecchia. So I give Brady, I think we learned who the real GOAT is. It's Tom Brady. It's not Patrick Mahomes.
Big time. All right, well, that does wrap up today's episode of the Harvey Hour. We thank you for the constant support as always. We'll be back. Some scheduling potential issues, but I'll keep you updated as always. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, my name's Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We have been the cause of the Harvey Hour. We'll catch you in the next episode of the Harvey Hour. We'll be here live right here on YouTube.
Good night, Grandpa.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift.